Have you ever seen a moment so quiet it almost felt alive? At the zoo, in a corner where laughter once filled the air, the oldest gorilla lay completely still. His eyes, once sharp and curious, now stared blankly at the ceiling. Visitors whispered, their faces pressed against the glass, trying to understand why such a strong, majestic animal seemed to vanish from life itself. If you're watching this, comment below where you're from, city, state, or country. I'd love to know who's joining me for this story. Why would a gorilla, so powerful and full of energy, stop moving entirely? Could an animal truly lose the will to live? The answer is more heartbreaking than you might imagine. This was not illness, and it was not old age. It was grief, the kind that pierces the heart and lingers in silence. The gorilla's spirit had dimmed, leaving only a motionless shell that the world could see, but few could understand. Every day, the zookeepers tried something new. Fruits were offered in different arrangements, toys were introduced, and gentle music played near his enclosure, but nothing stirred him. He didn't lift his head, didn't reach out, didn't acknowledge the voices around him. People passed by, some saddened, others unsure how to react, but all left with the same uneasy feeling. A once vibrant life seemed suspended in time. Some believed he was mourning a lost companion. He had once shared his days with another gorilla, a friend whose absence left an emptiness even humans might struggle to comprehend. Others whispered about age and the inevitability of decline. But anyone paying close attention could tell the difference. This was not the natural slowing of years, it was the stillness of a soul withdrawn, waiting for something it might never find. Families passing the glass found themselves reflecting on their own losses. Children asked their parents why he wouldn't play, why he seemed sad, and adults felt a pang of recognition. Perhaps, without even realizing it, they were seeing their own struggles mirrored in the gorilla's silent protest against life. The air seemed heavier here, as though the sorrow of one creature had seeped into the hearts of all who watched. Even the staff, the ones who cared for him daily, felt a weight pressing down in the enclosure. Meetings were held, reports filed, consultations made with veterinarians and animal behaviorists. Each morning, the same scene awaited them, a massive gorilla, lying motionless, as if the world had stopped for him alone. Yet, they did not give up, driven by a hope they could barely define. Days bled into weeks, and the zoo's corner once filled with excitement became a place of quiet reflection. The gorilla's presence was almost ghostly, a living reminder that even the strongest beings can carry hidden pain. Visitors left with questions about life, love, and loss, unsure if they had witnessed an animal or a mirror of their own fragile emotions. And so he remained, still and silent, a shadow of his former self. But beneath the immobility, a story was waiting to unfold, one that would remind everyone who watched that even the smallest spark of connection can awaken hope where it seems impossible. It was a silence that demanded attention, curiosity, and, perhaps, empathy from all who stood there. The zookeepers watched with growing concern as the gorilla remained unmoved. Each morning, they arrived with baskets of fresh fruits, colorful toys, and new enrichment devices, hoping for even the smallest sign of curiosity. He ignored them all, laying on the cool concrete, his eyes distant, as if locked in memories they could never reach. Every failed attempt weighed heavier on their hearts. Dr. Harris, the lead caretaker, studied him for hours each day. She had worked with gorillas for decades, yet she had never seen one so withdrawn. She wondered if grief could truly sink that deep. Could an animal experience loneliness as profoundly as a human? The evidence was here in front of them, a creature alive in body, yet trapped in silent despair. Other staff tried gentle music, songs meant to soothe the senses. They played soft melodies, hoping he might lift his head, hum along, or simply notice. But his attention remained locked on the ceiling, ignoring every sound. The zookeepers whispered among themselves, tension filling the room. Each day of inaction added pressure, the fear of permanent withdrawal growing stronger. They introduced new companions in the enclosure, younger gorillas meant to spark interaction. He observed them briefly but never approached. The others played, climbed, and called to him, yet he turned away, retreating deeper into his solitude. The more they tried, the more fragile he seemed, as if the very world around him had become a stage he no longer wished to be part of. Visitors noticed the change too. Families came expecting lively behavior, only to find a massive gorilla lying still, eyes empty of engagement. Children asked questions, their voices soft and uncertain, and parents struggled to answer. The air around the enclosure felt heavy, filled with an unspoken sorrow that seemed to press on everyone present. Dr. Harris reviewed his medical records repeatedly, searching for clues she might have missed. His body was strong, healthy even, but the spirit within seemed absent. She consulted colleagues, read case studies, and debated strategies. Nothing suggested a physical cause. This was emotional, psychological, a silent ache that no injection or treatment could reach. Even small gestures failed. The gorilla didn't respond to favorite foods, didn't touch toys, didn't even acknowledge familiar caretakers by name. Each attempt left the team more anxious, their own hope slowly eroding. It was difficult to watch an animal so powerful, so intelligent, surrender in such a way, yet there was no way to force him back. Every day felt heavier than the last. The zookeepers rotated shifts, each one staring into the same unmoving eyes, searching for a spark that never came. The enclosure that once buzzed with energy now felt frozen in time, a silent witness to the weight of grief. Yet, somewhere beneath that stillness, a possibility lingered, fragile and unseen, waiting for something, or someone, to awaken it. It was a bright Sunday morning when a little girl named Emily visited the zoo with her family. The sunlight spilled across the walkways, laughter and chatter filling the air, but her eyes were drawn to the corner where the old gorilla lay still. Unlike other visitors who passed by quickly, Emily stopped, curious and quiet, studying him with an intensity that seemed unusual for her age. Something about his stillness caught her attention. She asked her mother softly, "Why isn't he moving?" Her mother shrugged, unsure of how to explain a grief that no one could see. Emily's gaze lingered on the gorilla, and she felt a sudden urge to do something, anything, to reach him. She had brought her sketchbook along, something she always carried on trips, but until now it had only been for doodles and imagination. Sitting cross-legged on the concrete, Emily flipped open her sketchbook and began to draw. She didn't know what compelled her, only that she wanted to show the gorilla a world of happiness. Her small hands moved swiftly, creating a gorilla smiling among trees, surrounded by friends, a scene full of life and warmth. Her pencil danced across the page, and with each line, her excitement grew. When the drawing was finished, Emily carefully stood and walked to the glass. She pressed the paper against it, holding it with both hands, her face close to the gorilla. She whispered, "Look at this. This is you happy, with friends, playing again." The glass separated them, but her gesture carried a hope that crossed the distance, reaching for the creature inside. The crowd around them paused, watching her simple act of courage. Caretakers stepped back, unsure of what might happen, Dr. Harris observing quietly from a few feet away. No one had expected a child to attempt anything like this, and yet the energy around the drawing seemed to pulse with a quiet intensity. Emily's faith in a response was small, but it existed. The gorilla remained still at first. His eyes, distant and unreadable, finally flicked toward the paper. A subtle shift in his posture caught the attention of those nearby. No roar, no movement of hands, just the slow, careful lift of his head, as if he were recognizing something familiar, something meaningful. The first spark of life since weeks of silence appeared. Emily's heart raced. She crouched slightly, keeping the drawing pressed to the glass, and whispered again, imagining he could understand. Around them, visitors leaned closer, the air filled with anticipation. Dr. Harris felt a shiver run down her spine. She had seen many things in her career, but never a child seeming to reach across the human-animal divide with such immediacy. Minutes passed like hours, but the gorilla didn't retreat. He remained focused on the paper, a subtle change in his breathing, the faintest movement of his hand toward the glass. Something inside him had awakened, a response that no training or enrichment had been able to produce. Emily's simple drawing had become a bridge, connecting hope to a heart that had almost given up. At first, nothing happened. The gorilla's massive body remained pressed against the cold floor, his eyes barely acknowledging the world around him. Visitors who had lingered moved away quietly, thinking the child's drawing might be just another failed attempt. Emily's small hands trembled slightly as she held the paper closer to the glass, whispering softly, hoping for any kind of response. Then, slowly, his eyes flicked toward the paper. A subtle change, almost imperceptible, yet enough to draw gasps from the few who remained. Dr. Harris stepped closer, heart pounding, while other caretakers froze in place, unsure if they should intervene or simply watch. The gorilla lifted his head just a fraction, his gaze fixed, as if recognizing a long-lost memory in the lines of the child's drawing. His chest rose and fell differently now, with a rhythm that hinted at attention returning. Visitors leaned closer, holding their breath, sensing the fragile connection forming. The usual stillness of the enclosure had been replaced by a quiet, intense anticipation. Emily pressed the drawing against the glass with both hands, eyes wide, feeling a subtle warmth of hope that had been absent for weeks. Slowly, he pushed himself upright on his forearms, his massive frame shifting with careful effort. Each movement was deliberate, measured, as if testing the world again. The silence was electric, every heartbeat amplified in the minds of those watching. For the first time in days, he seemed present, alive in the moment, drawn to something beyond instinct or routine. Emily whispered again, a soft encouragement she hoped he could somehow understand. The gorilla inched closer, eyes locked on the paper, and raised a hand slightly, hovering near the glass. The gesture was tentative, almost uncertain, yet it carried a weight far beyond its size. Dr. Harris felt tears sting her eyes, knowing that this simple act had reached him where months of care could not. Other visitors had stopped moving, drawn into the quiet drama unfolding before them. Cameras and phones were lowered in respect, replaced by a collective sense of awe. The gorilla's head moved closer to the glass, his nostrils flaring gently, sniffing the air near the paper. Every subtle motion seemed magnified, each small step a victory against weeks of desolation. Emily smiled, hardly daring to breathe. She didn't let go of the drawing, keeping it pressed firmly against the glass, her tiny frame unwavering. The gorilla's eyes, once distant and empty, now glimmered with curiosity, a fragile spark that grew brighter with every second. The atmosphere around the enclosure was charged with something that could not be measured, hope returning in its purest form. Finally, he rested his massive head against the glass, just above the drawing, and paused, studying the lines as if he could understand the happiness Emily had drawn for him. Every person nearby watched in stunned silence, aware that they were witnessing something rare, almost impossible. In that moment, the old gorilla had responded, and the world felt just a little lighter for everyone who had stopped to see. The gorilla leaned forward, shifting his massive weight with effort, and for the first time in weeks, his fingers brushed against the glass exactly where Emily's drawing pressed. The contact was delicate, almost tentative, yet full of meaning. Visitors held their breath, watching the old animal acknowledge the small world a child had created for him. Slowly, he rested his forehead against the paper, closing his eyes briefly, as if sensing the happiness and life depicted in Emily's lines. A quiet murmur spread through the crowd, some wiping tears from their eyes. In that instant, the weight of despair that had hung over the enclosure for so long began to lift, replaced by a fragile, shimmering hope. Emily's hands remained pressed to the glass, fingers trembling slightly as she whispered words of encouragement, even though she knew he could not hear them. The gorilla's response, so simple yet profound, confirmed that he understood in a way deeper than words could convey. Caretakers and visitors alike felt the power of connection, unspoken yet undeniable. Dr. Harris stepped closer, her heart swelling at the sight. She had witnessed countless interactions with animals, but never one so pure, so transformative. The gorilla, once locked in his sorrow, had been touched by innocence, and in return, offered a glimpse of recovery. Weeks of worry and frustration suddenly felt worth every effort, every moment spent observing and caring. From that day, the caretakers used drawings, colors, and simple objects to stimulate him, introducing ways for him to interact with the world again. Slowly, deliberately, he began to engage with his surroundings. He climbed small structures, explored familiar toys, and even responded to the presence of other gorillas. Each step of progress was celebrated quietly, a testament to the patience and empathy that had guided the staff. Emily visited often, bringing new sketches and ideas. Her small hands and limitless imagination had opened a door, one the gorilla had been unwilling to cross alone. Each encounter reminded everyone watching that the simplest gestures, an innocent drawing, a kind touch, can reach even the most guarded heart. Her presence was a bridge between human care and the animal's silent world. The lesson became clear to all who witnessed it. Sometimes the grandest solutions are not necessary to heal a wounded soul. Love, patience, and empathy, expressed through small, sincere acts, can restore hope in ways no medicine or training could. A child with a pencil had reignited the spark in a being many had feared lost forever. The enclosure, once heavy with sorrow, now carried a quiet vitality. The gorilla moved with purpose, his eyes brighter, his gestures intentional. Visitors felt a new energy in the air, subtle but undeniable. The story of Emily and the gorilla spread quietly among those present, leaving a message of hope, the power of simple kindness, and the profound impact one small heart can have on another.